We are going to talk about what's called the scanner glitch in Java. The scanner glitch happens when we are reading input from the input stream. The scanner will take in all input from the keyboard, including the new line or the return key on your keyboard. So if you look at your keyboard, you see the return key. That basically puts in what we would call the new line character, which you guys are used to seeing as the /n in our output statements. So when entering data, this can cause an issue because that new line character is not always consumed or read in. And then what happens is it stays on the input stream until the next input line is executed. So we're going to take a look at some glitches where this might occur. So our first scenario is going to be when we input string data. In this scenario, we are going to read in two string items, a name and then a fruit. So we're going to ask the user to enter their name and enter a fruit, and this is what our program should execute. So if I enter my name and then a fruit, then it's going to output my order summary, my name, and the fruit. And so that works. A couple of things I'm going to point out. Number one, sometimes it's kind of nice to have that input on the same line, so we can use a print statement instead of a print ln. And that will make our user input a little bit more friendly. But then we need to add a space at the end. So that inputs. The next thing I'm going to do is I want you to pay attention to how we read in our input. So we used our scanner object, which was defined as in here in our scanner when we created a scanner. And then we used in.nextLine and in.nextLine. So the in.nextLine reads the whole entire line all the way through to the end of line character. But you're going to discover that there is an in.next. And many times you use this and then you run into some potential problems. So let's see what happens when we execute this. Let me clear the terminal and execute this on a clean window. So when we input a name and then a fruit, it doesn't let me input the fruit. It skipped right over inputting the fruit. Execute it again just to see what that does. I'm going to input another name, and it skips right over entering the fruit. And that's because when I use .nextLine to read in my data, it reads all the way to that new line character. When I don't, what happens is we don't see it, but out here on the input stream somewhere, that new line character is waiting to be inputted, and it's read into this, it's read in by this second in.nextLine. If we really wanted to use .next here, well, so two things. I would say the solution to this, because we're reading in string data, is just to read in everything with in.nextLine. And that's going to be the best solution for this scenario. Let's take a look then. So this was that scenario. And our solution is to use in.nextLine for inputs. And what that ensures is that you have a clean input stream for the next input. Our second scenario is when you are inputting and working with numeric data and string data. So we're going to look at string data followed by numeric. We're going to look at numeric data followed by string. And then we're going to look at that next versus next line input commands. In this scenario, we have kept our fruit as a string, and then we're going to enter how many. So we're going to ask the user for the fruit, and we're going to enter how many. If we execute the code, we can say we want a pair, and we want 4, and it's going to output our order summary. So that's the scenario. We are inputting both numeric and string data. So in this example, when we enter the fruit, we've used in.nextLine, which we now know reads until the entire end of the line and captures that new line character. And then we're reading and using with in.nextInt, which reads in only the numeric data that is presented on that line. It doesn't read any further than that. And so you saw this execute correctly. Let's experiment just a little bit. If I use in.next, does that change our output? So let's go ahead and execute this, see what happens. And actually, let me clear the terminal. we're going to enter our fruit, and we're going to enter how many, and it works successfully. So in this particular instance, when I am following string data followed by numeric data, the use of .next or .next line doesn't appear to make a difference. And the reason for that is when I'm reading in next line, or excuse me, when I'm reading in a next integer, it's just scanning the input stream for a number. And so it doesn't care if it sees that new line character left on the input stream or not. And so in this case, that doesn't matter whether we use .next or .next line. Now, what happens if we change the order of these two statements? And then we're going to input our fruit. So I've got in.next int followed by in.next. Execute our code. It's going to ask me how many do I want. I'll say 4, enter a fruit, berry, and that is successful. However, what happens if I change my .next to a .next line? When that happens, we're going to type in I want 6, and then it skips entering the fruit. So what happens is the new line character is hanging out at the end of that input stream, and when we ask to input the next line, it reads into the end of the line, so it picks up that return character or the new line character that's sitting on your input stream. So if you were really wanting to use in.next here, what you can do is clear the input stream by doing an in.next line consumes or reads that enter key, or what we know now is the new line character. And so if we use a in.next line, execute this code, I can input I want 7, and the fruit is going to be a pear, and our program works as expected. So depending upon the order in which you read in your data, and if you read numeric data followed by string data, you're going to have to watch for the scanner glitch. I would recommend that you go ahead and use just a in.next line. It reads in the scanner data, doesn't do anything with it, which is fine, but it basically starts us with a clean read on the next input statement. You saw you could use in.next, or you could use in.next line here then if that's the case. So either one of these .next or .next line would work for reading that string data in. The other thing, it doesn't matter whether you are reading in integers or if you're reading in doubles, whatever the numeric data type here, it's not going to matter. And remember, our first little execution of this was when we had string data followed by numeric data. When you have that situation, then there is no issue because the numeric data is looking for numbers only, and it's not going to worry about a new line character being left on the input stream. Hopefully that explains the scanner glitch a little bit more and talks about the solutions. If we go back to our last slide here, the solution is to use the next line between inputs where that issue might occur. We say that this clears the input stream or starts with a clean input stream for your next input value.